edge of the table, and then I'm okay.
So we have to make sure this isn't a 2-hour meeting or even a half-hour meeting or even an hour and 15 minutes or even an hour.
Obviously, he doesn't know me. There's one thing that motivates me, probably more than anything else.
I know you. That's why I'm making the announcement.
I know, but you know what? The one thing that does motivate me is anticipation of food.
Oh, okay.
We are the same people.
I'm telling you. You won't hear a peep from me, sir.
Yes, we have a prior engagement at noon we are trying to get to, so everyone
Yes.
listening will be glad to hear, probably. This really is one of the smaller
No, I appreciate
agendas
that.
we've had in a while.
It just turned 11 o'clock. But someone tells me, so we'll call to order the County Board of Commissioners Finance and Administration Committee meeting. We have the approval of the agenda. Is there anything you wish changed on the agenda, added, deleted?
Let me,
Okay, we'll
Chairman?
move on then to the call of the public.
Oh, did you say?
no, I didn't have anything.
Oh, I thought you
No.
said hang on, Chairman.
No, no,
Sorry.
no, I'm sorry. Okay.
Anybody online?
We have Jen Crawford online, but she does not have her hand up at this time.
Hi,
Okay.
Jen. Or
And we'll
Director
move on to our
Crawford.
first business item, which is consider approving the completion of the State Tax Commission Form L 4029 2023 tax rate request, affirming each county approved millage rate and authorize the board chair and the county clerk to sign the same.
And I do not see Mr. Preston on the Zoom. I did just text him a minute or so ago to say, hey, are you hopping on? He usually does join us by Zoom for this one. So we could talk about this without him, or we could move on, and if he joins us later, go back, Mr. Chairman, whichever you would like to do.
I don't think there was anything unusual about this form. It just states what we are proposing to collect and notify the state so we can collect it.
You are correct. Each of
Yeah.
the 4 special millages that would be levied in December, not our July operating levy, have already come before you. Rick Collins came before you, and Alyssa Haynek from Medical Care, Alexis Hansen from Parks and Rec, and Jen Crawford from Commission on Aging. They all came to a prior meeting to request these rates in
Right.
column 11. And that's what's reflected on the.
I
annual
took
form.
this as more of a housekeeping.
I'm comfortable with.
I'm good with it if you are.
Would you like to make a motion?
I certainly would. Would like to move to consider approving the completion of the State Tax Commission Form L 4029 2023 tax rate request affirming each county approved millage rate and authorize the board chair and county clerk to sign the same to our regular board meeting.
To the work
Or
session.
to the work session, I'm sorry, yeah.
I'll second that. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Same opposed, same sign. It moves forward then to next Tuesday's work session.
Beautiful.
Second item is consider adopting the recommended Isabella County bank reconciliation policy effective immediately upon adoption.
Thank you. I just wanted to let Pete know we covered it. I wanted to make sure I got the right hand emoji.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, it was the thumbs up that I was looking for, not something else. Hopefully I got that right. So we have from our last audit, fiscal 22 audit, one of the comments that we received, auditors noted that the county did not have a formal bank reconciliation policy. Bank recs are being performed regularly, monthly on all 78-ish now bank accounts. But we didn't have a policy about how soon they should be done, who would be responsible for doing it, that type of thing. So we drafted the attached bank rec policy. It does put the onus on the county administrator controller's office to perform the bank recs, but that we work together with the treasurer's office to get that done. Right now we do both offices do bank reconciliations, but this, and I suppose both offices who do them, it would fall under this policy regardless of who did it, who did them.
State law says county treasurer is responsible. So I don't know if you can make a policy that says somebody else is responsible. If state law says the county treasurer's responsible.
So does the court now adhere to that? Because that's been one thing we've been cited time and time again for.
And will still be cited for that as far as I know. Then that's a separate issue from a policy about how bank reconciliations will be handled.
I think the auditors were looking for a confirmation from somebody. I think the administration wasn't doing that
Correct,
on a timely basis.
correct.
Ours and I do the reconciliation. Kathleen does the reconciliations and I do the corrections. If there are any, I check it over.
The review.
in a Short period of time. So,
And then this is just a follow-up.
yeah, and I don't know why they say there's gotta be a policy. I don't know whether that's a recommendation that they can make as auditors. With state
Well,
law says.
And I understand it. If state law said that, you'd still want a policy about timeliness of them, right? Like
Something.
how often, I think, you know, or how, not how often, but how soon they're done. They're done monthly, but it's, you know, policy sets that they are no later than 30 business days after the end of the month. So this kind of sets that timing issue. It sets a time that any corrections need to be corrected by 120 days after the month that they're
I have a question.
within.
Sure. Is this a standard operating procedure throughout Michigan? Did you have this policy in place? Or is it just because of accounting the auditor said we have to have it?
I believe that it's because the auditors said we have to have it because they identify this as best practice in
agree
government,
with
in local government.
I'm
to have
surprised.
this policy.
I'm just surprised you don't have it. I'm so used to having a bank reconciliation policy. When I saw this, I was a little surprised we don't have one.
And
It's
probably,
just different, I guess.
but probably why we don't have one is because there's never been issues in the past with any bank rec, like
They
the
always
auditors
work out.
come, the bank recs are there.
All
we
is
check a
good.
Box, we move forward.
Okay.
We've not been able to review those bank recs in time here in admin, and so it resulted, they looked a little deeper, I would say, and it resulted in the comment of you need this policy. So it's not a mandated thing, but a best practice thing recommended from our auditors.
See, I like that idea.
And you'll see a few more because this wasn't the only policy that we were delinquent on in the audit. So you'll see a few more
Okay.
policy drafts coming forward. And we really need to have those policies in place prior to the start of the field work for fiscal 23 audit so that we don't get written up again.
Correct.
So I will circle back because, you know, now that I think about this, this policy didn't go to legal for review. I'll circle back with legal about
Take it to legal.
you know, the issue with the treasurer being responsible for it and how best to write that in.
Treasurer Pickens, do you have any comments on the policy or?
I've never seen it, so I don't know. I just heard about it right now,
Yeah.
which I don't believe, like I said, county treasurer does that, he's responsible for the bank reconciliations. We do the bank reconciliations. I mean, if they choose to do them too, I mean, that's redundancy, but you know, they go ahead and do it, that's fine. I don't have much to say about that, I just know that we're responsible for it, we do it on a timely basis. Done it that way for 32 years that I know of. I don't see what the problem was. I don't know what the auditors, other than the issue of the other people not doing it on a timely basis.
Oh, and remember in the meeting that we had with you, Kathleen, the auditors, they had mentioned that best practice, it's not a law, it's not anything of you have to do it in general ledger, but they wanted to see those because we have BSNA and general ledger, they wanted to see those done in there. That's where the deposits are, that's where any journal entries are, everything. That's why accounting, that's why admin still does them, you know.
And that's why I say at that time as well, I don't think that they can tell you how to do your bank reconciliations through the computer or by hand.
Yeah.
Or however, as long as they're being done and comply with the state of Michigan law. I mean, when they said that, I think they're wrong.
Okay.
and the ability for, to say, hey, you guys have to have a policy on that.
Then maybe that's something we can, when they come back this year, I guess we push a little more with
Well,
them
I'm
or
glad- I
push
was
on
glad you
them.
had a question.
Well, I think
Yes.
that, again, I think it's best practice. And I think the auditors are recommending it because it makes their audit easier, right?
Well, that's
When the
just- Yeah.
bank rec is done in
Yeah,
our
that's exactly
software
what it is.
versus in an
In an
Excel
Excel
sheet,
spreadsheet.
it's easier for
Yes.
them to audit. So they may very well say, fine, you don't have to do this, but it may affect their cost too. We would want to talk to them about
Yep,
that.
yep.
I would think, because they're making the recommendation to make their job easier. So if we're doing something to make their job more difficult, I would think that would affect their cost.
I don't think
We need
it's
to
a
know that.
question of making it difficult or making it easier. I think it's a question of, if you're gonna write a policy and I just don't think there's a policy that needs to be written for something that's already a state law.
Okay, and I understand the state law, but from our perspective as a board,
The board wants to make a policy for those doing it outside, that's
see,
fine,
that's kind of where I'm at in that.
that's fine.
I think is a check and balance.
They
I
don't- they
kind of
don't
like
check.
that. I mean, I'm not thinking, and I just being disrespectful, I'm just saying, I kind of like this idea of having a policy in place that clearly defines what they have to do. All
What they
right,
have to do is fine, I mean, that's fine,
Right.
you can write all the policies you want.
I know exactly.
And, whatever you want, I mean,
Okay.
stand on your head in the corner and do bank reconciliations. I want that in the policy. The county treasurer's not gonna do that.
No,
Okay, so
right, you already do it.
we already, don't stand on our head, but
No, but
we get the bank reconciliation done, yeah.
Steve,
Like I
does
said,
state law, does state law speak to how soon after month end bank recs need to be done? Or does it just say the treasurer is responsible?
It says that the treasurer is, because when the Controller Act thing come about years and years ago. It's letter written, Dick Baldwin, and go, there's a numbered letter on the bulletin that says the bank reconciliation stays with the county treasurer. Because they were looking to pull whatever, not just here, but
Sure.
other places, looking to pull duties through the Controller Act. And they wanted to know what stage.
Sure, I would think that would have been very important at the
So-
time.
It was just
just
defined. that
clarify,
County treasurer is responsible for those payments.
but no time frame, no timeline. Just like
No,
your
but
job.
the reasonableness of it is you gotta do it on a timely basis. It's always been done. Now they're saying you gotta do it on the computer. I would like to see that in state law, if that's the case, we need to make some arrangements here. To be able to do it on the computer.
Yeah, because if they gladly
It was the
accept
administration.
the treasurers,
From the county treasurer,
Correct.
so, I mean, it's not,
The onus falls on,
well, it didn't fall on, it was not. us.
not on you, but that falls on
Still have to
town
continue,
administrators.
we have to continue to do it, I don't care if every office does the bank reconciliation. We
You still have
do
to
it.
by law.
Yes.
right, but they're looking at hours when they come in because they're done through general ledger. So it would be great if they could just look at the treasurers, I mean, help, then we
Yeah.
probably,
But we would save us
Huge
a lot
amounts
of time every
and
month.
effort, yeah.
they don't need
Hers
them
and, yeah.
done. No problem with that, but the fact that they're pushing that. it
Was
needs
there
to be
something
done.
that occurred in the last audit that they're pushing it?
But just the timeliness aspect.
Timeliness. Yeah, that the bank recs were not prepared and reviewed timely by admin office. They were prepared and reviewed timely by treasurer's office, but the auditors don't look at the treasurers, or they might look at the treasurer, but they consider the administrators' bank recs as the official ones because we perform the bank rec in BSNA software. So it hits our general ledger, and when they run reports, it's all there. The treasurer's office does it in Excel. And so it's outside of our software.
I guess I have a couple things then. It seems like there's things up in the air, hasn't gone through legal review. I think maybe, are we gonna have the same auditors this year?
Yes, we're under
Maybe
contract.
we should address that back to the auditors to see if they can work somehow with the
Mhm.
reconciliation done by the treasurer's office. Why create more work
Exactly.
for
yeah.
administration if we don't need to do it?
Mhm.
And we don't move this on to a work
Agreed.
session until we have a little more homework.
It's too important to rush.
Also, if you got a paper copy, I would appreciate it. I got 2 copies of the September 8th invoice list. So somehow I got, just
Oh,
putting the
Yeah,
packets together.
I've got a September 1. Is
Nope,
that-
I need the reconciliation.
Oh, the adjustment.
Have that, that's an extra one.
Well,
the-
the adjustment list doesn't exist yet.
I'll look at it online. Looks like we're gonna
Is
look
it-
at it again.
Is it September 1
may
and
look at it.
September 8? Those
Yeah,
are the two.
the two. invoices.
No, I don't need that. I've got the full set. I have duplicate copy of the 8th and did not get the reconciliation recommended policy.
Oh, you didn't get the bank
Yeah, thank,
reconciliation.
Good Lord.
I don't have that either.
Do we have an extra packet?
I
Ryan?
saw it online.
Maybe.
we'll look at it online. Looks like there's gonna be maybe some additional work or
Yeah.
some. So we'll look at it for the next committee meeting.
The Legal and the auditors need to clarify.
I will give you mine if you need it for now.
And Brian, can you make a note to give to send Treasurer Pickens the bank rec policy too, so that he has that to look at? Thank you.
So at this point, we just don't make a motion, move it on.
Correct, yep.
Just leave it.
We table it.
Well,
Table it?
you could motion to table it and we'll just bring it back at a future.
I will move to table the recommended Isabella County Bank reconciliation policy until we have further review.
Support.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Always same sign. Statement. The next one is consider approving fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 2023-15. Fourth quarter budget adjustments for the general fund. And authorize the board chair to sign the same.
So this is just general fund. So at the top, it should say Fund 101 General Fund. Just want to make sure we're on the right one.
Mhm.
The only thing changing with revenues right now is we're removing or decreasing the transfer in from delinquent tax revolving. We have always said we're not going to transfer in delinquent tax revolving to increase general fund balance. And with the recognition of about $8.5 million of ARPA lost revenue, we will end the year adding to fund balance, right? Because that was a bonus to us. So to take $100,000 from delinquent tax would just be adding more to our fund balance. That's not necessary. So we did note in here that fund balance unreserved is really decreasing by 200,000 because we're not taking in the transfer in. So if you will, we're going to end the year $200,000 less adding to fund balance than we would, right? But that's our culture now. That's we don't take from another fund balance to add to ours.
Correct.
We take it when we need it. We don't need it right now. So the expenditure lines below do net out to a net zero. Okay. So what we've got going on is we're decreasing expenses that were budgeted in Board of Commissioners. Some of the things that aren't happening in fiscal 23, we now know, including the audiovisual.
That's a big one, yep.
Yes. The audiovisual upgrade for hopefully room 320. We're reducing salaries and wages and admin by 30,000. That's just lapsed wages that are available, same as the health insurance and admin. We are increasing contract services in admin that was needed for the outside accountant that we had for a little while through Robert Half, the temporary executive assistant that we had through Robert Half, a few of them, and the now the accountant that we're utilizing through Maynard Casterison at a lower rate than Steve Korinovic's associate rate. We're utilizing through Maynard, so we did have to increase the contracted services line. Increases in information systems, just a little bit for the health insurance that we budgeted in there. We just need to increase that a little bit, and that just over 47,000 is for the phone system that we put in last December. It was over budget, so we just need to, some of those decreases in admin that we talked about are, you know, going to cover that, if you will. We've also talked about reducing the budgeted amounts for gas and electric. That is in this building right here, lowering that 20,000 in the current year. Building up $5,000 into postage. We talked last time, you know, you saw in that third quarter 11-month report where we were pretty tight. So we do feel like we need to add some more into that. It's important because at audit time, we can't have any department that is over budget. So as a postage is a department. Reducing in prosecuting attorney and sheriff's department, various amounts for basically lapsed wages. This is salaries and wages, and because we've had so many vacancies, these dollars are freed up, if you will. You can see that some of that is going to cover some software subscription expenses that the sheriff has over time for the Wise Township, those new patrols. We didn't have that budgeted before, and building more into marine safety. Remember when we looked at that third quarter report, marine safety was overspent. So we're just building up the budget. This is all about budget. 20,000 coming out of salaries and wages and corrections, same story, lapsed wages. Also insurance costs are down because of those lapsed wages. And a little bit in, it looks like emergency management, we probably just budgeted more health insurance than was needed. The big increase here and the big story is the transfer out $100,000 to self-insurance fund. The self-insurance fund is performing poorly right now because of the decision we made to go self-insured on prescriptions. Now those involved, or you know, that those of you who go to the insurance committee meetings, you understand the changes that were made in prescriptions. We started out the year with a few people on a certain prescription. A number of people started using a diabetic medication for weight loss. It became a popular thing, and it became very expensive, with going from a couple people who medically needed it to, I believe it was 15 individuals on the injectables. Very expensive, and we're tipping the scales on costs. So what you had was the whole employee base paying for a few folks' weight loss. And collectively, industry standard was moving that carriers were disallowing coverage for those medications unless it was medically necessary. So we working with 44 North, we made sure that anyone who medically needed the medicine would still be able to get it, and they do. Anyone using it for another purpose would have to come forth with a prescription of medical necessity. So that is that is carved out significant costs, but not before damage was done. These were, I think, in the neighborhood, I want to say 20,000-30,000 a month for these. So decision was made to no longer cover those. You would have received back in June the notice of that and emails from me in that regard. So
I would think your family doctor, if you wanted to ask them to insist that this is medically necessary, if you had a weight problem, would probably write a prescription based on that. So I'm not sure we're going to have any savings in the future, because people are using it. If it's working, they're probably going to fight to keep it.
we'll see. I do know, or I do understand that you can get to a point of medical necessity for the weight loss portion too, right? There's a certain category or diagnosis that you have to.
BMI.
Yes, yeah, you've got it. A certain BMI, a certain morbid obesity, which apparently I am according to my doctor. So that's, so maybe.
I wouldn't have thought that.
I didn't either. She learned about that day. I've come to accept it. Come to accept it.
I guess that either.
Wow, we
Okay.
went off track there, but $100,000 to self-insurance fund, remember in the budget, we presumed savings, about $100,000 of savings by self-insured, and if you carve out those certain prescriptions, we would be on track, but with those in the mix, we weren't. Again, industry standard, something that Blue Cross Blue Shield is now not covering, Priority Health is now not covering. And if we had gone self-insured with the Blues, this would have been the same effect for our employees. At some point, Blues would say, we're no longer covered.
It's an industry standard operating procedure.
It is,
Um,
unfortunately. so.
did want to make a comment. I feel for the folks that, we're finding success with the medication. I feel for them. I understand. I hope that they're able to find something that works as well, if not better, if they really need it. I certainly understand that. But in this case, I don't think we have too many options here, really, financially. I hate to say that, but
No, and I will say that the insurance committee met yesterday and there's some champions on that committee who really are looking forward to bringing back some sort of incentivized wellness program to, where it's, it's monthly. It used to be 25 years ago, monthly, that we had some sort of challenge every month. Maybe you remember this, Commissioner, that people would engage in, and the way they talked about it yesterday, people from different buildings would get to see each other in these challenges, it kind of brought our team
we're a community.
together. Yes. So I think, we'll be looking to do some more things like that.
I'm all about team and community. I like that.
I've been out of here too many years, to remember that.
Too
Fair enough.
long ago.
I do have just a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
On the fund balance decreasing the 200,000, you said that was part of the AV upgrade for the room upstairs and this one. Just delaying that because lack of time to,
Yes, sir. Just like the wage study RFP is just, has just been released. The audio visual RFP hasn't even been written yet.
okay. And once we move ahead with that, be doing an RFP on that.
Yes, and another budget amendment in 24 because we did not build those
Put it back,
into the 24 budget.
bring it back up.
And on the $2,600 for the Wise Township Patrol, that's increasing expense, but I know they are gonna reimburse it. Should there be a increase in revenue to offset that? It's supposed to be
Isn't it a set
budgetary
fee?
neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something else, but I can't think of
It's
it
a
now.
good one. So we'll build that in before it comes to the board on Tuesday then. You're right, there should be. I'm thinking of that, right? Yeah, is that the same for Marine Patrol too?
Should be, 'cause that was extra, right? at Lake
Marine
Isabella?
Patrol, right, but with Marine Patrol, it's my understanding that we have, I think, maybe 8,100 built in, maybe 5,100 built in. This is above and beyond what those costs are. And that's something that we need to have a conversation with Sheriff of,
Above and
What-
beyond what we're getting reimbursed for.
with Wise Township and with Lake Isabella and with school resource, those kind of things. It's a wash with marine safety this year. It's higher than what it's not a wash this year.
It should,
Um,
it should be, should it not?
I'll have to have that conversation with, yeah.
Probably also take, Littlefield Lake and Coldwater Lake. I mean, that may be part of this too. It may not be part of the agreement with Lake Isabella.
Right.
Right, yeah, so maybe a piece of it is covered, but not, but I will get with Sheriff, so there is an amount that is covered. With revenue, this is just above and beyond, but to your point, the revenue
The
still
Wise
needs to
Township.
be, the revenue for marine safety.
Mhm.
in
No.
the township.
Yeah,
Control.
the revenue for marine safety does not need to be increased because the expenditures are just, we're not getting any more revenue than what we've
Back,
already
okay.
budgeted, but for, excuse me, for Wise Township, we will. So I will increase that revenue.
Good catch, finance chairman.
Um,
That's why you're the boss.
Hmm.
I'm not the boss.
Do you want an accounting job in the ag office? Are you for hire?
Would you like to make a
Yes, I
motion?
can. I move to consider approving the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 2023-15, fourth quarter budget adjustments for general fund, and authorize the board chair to sign the same to our regular work session.
With any adjustments still forthcoming?
Yep, with the adjustments
Yes.
forthcoming.
I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. It moves forward. Now we're looking at the number 7, consider approving fiscal year 2023 budget amendment 2023-16, fourth quarter adjustments for other funds, and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
Yeah, so this handles a handful of other funds besides general fund. Community alternatives we'll deal with first, that just moving about $1,200. I'm not really moving, transferring to other funds, community alternatives out of the 258 and pulling down their fund balance. So or actually just, we're not transferring out from general fund to that. It's just within its own fund, but budgeting more so that at audit time, we're not overspent.
Good
No,
question.
this is coming to general fund. We no longer utilize the 258 fund, almost very similar to the soldiers, sailors. This is now, a piece of this is budgeted in general fund within the courts. Are you
But we
looking at
don't need-
258?
Yes.
So we're decreasing their fund balance because they're transferring monies to general. fund.
Gotcha.
They had, we appropriated every quarter to them.
So you're looking at this then saying they don't need as much?
Yeah,
And-
this has
and
been on
pulling
the
it back
books for this,
before the
I
end
think
of-
the second year now, and I'm just
Yeah.
cleaning it up so
Thank
come
you.
audit time, we don't have $1,190 sitting there with a fund balance that no one's gonna use because it's now
Okay.
budgeted in the courts line items.
Same for veterans relief, like that 30,000
Yep.
or 29,159 on here that we talked about at the third quarter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, third quarter
That's
report.
a-
Good question though, before you go on. Do
Yeah,
you have a copy of that for me? I've got 2 of the 101 general funds. So I need a copy of. I'll look at it. I've seen it online,
I will make you.
thank
but thank you,
you,
ma'am.
thank you. Well, mishap with the packets. So I'll wait until she comes back, because I don't wanna. Well, number one, I need her, but, number two, I don't wanna go forward if you don't have it. in front of
I
you.
have a general question. It doesn't really pertain to this list, but I know you can make changes in the budget under certain authority up to what's it, $50,000 for capital projects or?
It is 50,000, it's 25,000 for equipment, $50,000 for other.
So the cost overage on the last report, 47 for the telephone system, that didn't have to come before the county board again for
Correct.
approval?
Correct.
It did, yeah, it didn't, but I figured if we were doing all of the other ones to put it in, that's something that you could have done.
Transparency, yeah,
Yep.
mostly for transparency. Yes, I could have done that. I could have found, I could have reduced, well, anywhere in general fund, to be honest. And any other expense, I could have reduced and then increased the phone amount to be a net zero. I can do that, but I choose to bring those forward. Now, some of them are so minuscule that and maybe some of these, some people would consider some of these minuscule, but we prefer the budget amendment that comes to you to include, just so we can have a conversation about, there's lapsed wages in prosecutor, there's lapsed wages here in the sheriff. Now, we need to transfer more out to self-insurance fund. Now, the phone project was over budget. 50,000 of that hit general fund.
And if that exceeds the policy authorizations, probably something that should come just for transparency.
Yeah, yes, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
I know I appreciate it from an educational standpoint, so thank you for that.
So we could go, but if that is an appetite down the line that you only want to see over the $50,000 per the budget resolution that
Yeah.
we have to bring we could do that too, and the rest of these. you know,
Anything over whatever the resolution is, whatever the
Right,
policy is.
yeah, any of these 3,900, 15,000 that we can move, we can do those in-house. It's just. And keep
I-
them where we work on them, administrator signs off, but. But I kind of throw them all together in here,
kinda
but
like
let
that.
us know if you don't want to
If
see
it's-
that,
If it's small peanuts, probably don't need to worry about it, but just
the bigger stuff, okay?
Yes, and I do want to say, remember, it's if we can find the savings and increase an expense, right? So it's net zero, that's what I can do. If we ever have to increase expenses without increasing revenue, or increase expenses and increase revenue,
That's
it has to come back to the board because you set those budgets. So you have to increase them. I can't come in even with the 50,000 and increase anything. You guys set the ceiling.
And maybe rather than doing quarterly budget amendments, if it's a big ticket item, do it immediately, just
Mhm.
for us to know, and then you don't have to report
If
it
that
later.
makes it easier for you guys, yeah,
Yeah,
why not?
yeah, we can bring them forward whenever.
A little more expeditious.
We'll
and we don't have to
continue
worry
on
about-
then.
Okay, very good. So the next one, Fund 280 is our tribal fund. So that's our 2% grants that have been approved by the tribe. So we're decreasing fund balance in our tribal fund by just over 262,000, and down below you can see those 280, those expenditure lines that start with 280, where most of that is going. New equipment. Sheriff is doing the core track, the records management system for interoperability with all of the other agencies. You can see adult drug court, emergency management, animal control. That's actually HATS and those new glass door kennels, the 2% that they got. MSU Extension still drawing down some of their healthy
Healthy kids, fun, yep.
funds. Yep. The 293 and 294, these are there's a Veterans Relief Fund. I think we used to call that Soldiers and Sailors. Again, that was its own 293, its own fund outside of general fund. So every year we would budget $30,000 for soldiers and sailors relief, it was called. If it didn't get utilized, then it just sat in fund balance in that 293. Now, as Melissa said, in the last couple of years, we've done things a little different to where we're budgeting for that in general fund, so that if it doesn't get utilized, it comes back into general fund. It's not sitting over in a fund building up with no use.
And then the next year, we just budget that 30,000 again in the general fund, and
That too gives an idea how much we're using, if you're taking, accounting for it, showing it, saying this is what was used, and then pull it out at the end of the year was unused.
yeah.
Start over fresh. Okay.
Yes. And the other is the Veterans Trust Fund, the same type of thing, just a lot less dollars, $150.
So we're not taking veterans money, that on paper, this looks
Yeah.
awful, looks funky, yes.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. We're just what general fund appropriated to for those funds are now just being kept in general fund, still are able to pay those expenses out of there, just not in a separate fund. Yep. And for the tribal, I wanted to mention, this is always a goofy one to budget at budget time. I think for fiscal year 24 budget, I budget to the tune of maybe 150,000. We never know what generous amount we are going to get from the tribe at budget time. So that's why this comes, and they're usually, hefty amounts. We come throughout the year as those 2% are awarded, because we could put 100,000 or 150,000 in there as an expense that we're going to use. We don't know that sheriff's going to get it something for a project. We didn't know that HATS was going to get 60,000 for right off the bat. That's 160. I think we budgeted 100 for fiscal year 23. So we have to come back with these budget amendments to say, okay, now we received more money. So now because that expense
show.
still has to go out. Yeah. So, so the tribal will always be, will be on here every year to kind of balance out, because we don't have a crystal ball.
Well, thanks to the tribe, that's a good problem.
Yes,
Amen.
yes,
Thank
yep.
These are the good kind of problems,
So thanks for pointing that out. So that's the,
Yeah.
that's why you see a decrease in expense of
Yes.
the 280 because of how we have to budget for funds we may or may not get.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Well, I noticed there was some body language coming from the treasurer about maybe some concerns at some of the discussion.
Well, my concern is how does a third party organization get 2% tax?
They come under the county umbrella when they apply and the HATS application came through committee and was approved by the Board of Commissioners at an open meeting.
Because we're,
Girl Scouts can come in, Boy Scouts can come in, funds, appropriations as well,
if we were the fiduciary,
really.
my understanding, yes, we're the fiduciary for these operations.
Same as the Conservation District. I believe, well, I'll have to look at, I know we have a 2%, a policy, 2% policy in that regard, so I'll have to I'll double check that and make sure, but
And the monies that was left in the Veterans Fund. That got eliminated. You decided to put it in the general fund. Can you go and take from funds and do that? I understand what you're trying to do. Put it in the general fund.
Mhm.
Just so you can roll it over. But there was 30,000 in that fund. What happened to that money?
It's being transferred back to the general fund, the same way it was transferred, appropriated to them.
Can you?
And not
can you
used.
take it to appropriations once you've given it?
We have in the past. It's always, it's,
Some,
and it's gone through audit and it hasn't been an issue.
some entities, like
Audit.
Parks and Recreation, once you make an appropriation, it stays in their fund balance. And I remember we were accumulating quite a fund balance. And the only way the county board could get at it is they would reduce that appropriation to force us to spend it.
If
Oh.
you use it, no more allocations until you use your fund balance.
Yeah, red line.
But I don't,
Because
I don't know if that's all true for all. I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm just questioning it, that I maybe better check it. But I think once you, but why do we have a fund accounting system for county governments and things? Is to keep those funds separate and identify those funds. Once they're appropriated and established through the general fund, wherever they come from, grants, whatever. I think that's the idea of fund accounting, is that it stays there until it's used. Most of, I'm not sure that you can, yeah, just, was the full 30,000 of veterans? Is that all appropriated through the county?
Yes,
The whole money was every year?
the 30,000, that you mean like the 30,000 that,
Carry
that we're bringing back? Yeah, that was multiple years of, $30,000 appropriation, $30,000 appropriation. They did use some of it. Did use some of it another year. This is what is left of that.
So you're saying rather than balancing out these other funds with adjustments like this, maybe the next budget should just reduce the appropriation to that line item rather than.
Well, I'm just wondering about the legality, so taking
Legality.
money's back or fund. that
from a
you
special revenue fund.
Given to a fund.
Maybe not allowed.
I don't think you are either, but I, you know.
Let's check into,
Yeah,
I'd say we check into it, and clear it up.
Parks and Recreation doesn't have to worry anymore. They've got their own fund.
Yeah.
They'll give you any money, but other than ARPA, but
So I know you can't with childcare, and you can't with parks,
Yeah.
you can't with, there's a lot of funds out there, that's why we do fund the county. We can't go and hide monies into the fund and then pull it back and. I think that was brought up many, many years ago. Under former administrator. Maybe not this one, but several. And that, I just,
Yeah, well, thank you,
Kinda
Treasurer,
look
because
into
we'll
it.
definitely
Yeah, let's
look into
look
that
into that.
before
Yeah.
Tuesdays.
any other questions on the other fund? Fourth quarter budget adjustments.
None from me, Chairman.
Then I will move the consideration of the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 2023-16. Fourth quarter budget adjustments for other funds to the work session.
Support.
Move and supported. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose same sign. That moves forward. Our next item is consider approving the commitment of fund balance in the general fund in the additional amount of $1,736,804. Isabella County Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility Project.
So yes, at the last finance meeting, we talked about the need for the county budgeting for its share of the Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility Project. And currently, as the balance sheet sits for general fund, you have two portions of your fund balance that are reserved, if you will, for that project. The board has committed $3.450,228. You've committed that much of fund balance to the project. And also on the books, we still have a designated fund balance for the bond anticipation note, because that wasn't paid off until the beginning of this, well, it was actually the beginning of this year. Beginning of this fiscal.
How much was that again?
So for the bond anticipation note on the books is $2,630,567. So that combined just over just about 6.1 million of fund balance as we sit currently. But we're gonna wipe off the amount for the bond anticipation note, right? That we don't need to save any fund balance for that anymore. That is done and gone. So that amount will go away, if you will. So we need to add a certain amount to the 3.45 million that you have committed. And we're gonna say not just to carry us through for fiscal 23, but the rest of the county's portion, because we're over budget on the project, right? It's over the 41.5 million. So we've got to pony up this 1.7 million, 1,736,804. I get through it. That amount plus the amount you already have committed should be all the general fund funds that we need for the project going forward if it remains at the current budget. Any questions about that?
Mr. Embry still writing.
No, it's pretty. We gotta do to have the money in the bank. Gotta do.
Spending it, moving forward till we get to red ink.
Yeah,
Shh, I'm not wearing red today.
Motion.
I'm not wearing red today. A move to consider approving the commitment of fund balance to the general fund in the additional amount of $1.736804 million to the Isabella County Sheriff's Office and Correctional Facility Project.
I will support that. Moved and supported to move item 8 to the work session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Moves forward. Number 9, personnel policy changes for part-time employees, a discussion.
yeah, so this really is a continuation of some former previous discussions we've had about changes recently in the personnel policy. This one specifically, we've talked about part-time employees and the impact of allowing part-time employees to observe all holidays. Right now, they only receive holiday pay for Christmas Day and New Year's Day, and that's prorated, right? And we're always talking about prorated with part-time. It's whatever hours they're scheduled to work, right? It's not an automatic 7.5. In parks, it might be 8 hours.
Based on hours.
Yeah, based on hours. Melissa put together, thank you, Melissa, an analysis of departments where if we granted holidays for part-time, it would make a budgetary impact. Now, there's other departments who have part-time employees, like the Register of Deeds office. I know our facilities, we have a part-time custodian. But if you think about it, when we budget, we budget 29 hours a week for our part-time. So we budget whether they're working a holiday or they're working regular hours. So for those folks, there is no budgetary impact. We're already budgeting 29 hours a week. The impact to the budget will be there's not going to be any cushion anymore there. Right now, where there's a little cushion because we budget 29 hours a week for them. Forward, if they're getting holiday pay, they'll eat some of that up. Probably a very minor thing, but budget wise, no impact to those departments. Who we feel there is impact to are departments where they're working the holiday. Right? This is gonna be sheriff has a part-time cook. They don't get to take holidays off and not cook.
gotta work.
We've got to cover those holidays. So the impact, very few hours impacted there. Minor impact, I believe, to general fund of just about $1,650. Negligible to give holiday pay to the part-time affected, I think. in
I like
general
that
fund.
incentive though.
So now there's two outside funds we know that utilize part-timers and they utilize them for working holidays, right? They specifically don't get holidays off. Parks and Rec and the MRF. Now, Melissa, I don't know when you analyze this, MRF would be completely year-round. Parks and Rec, that impact is more seasonal. I don't know if you guys thought about which holidays and thought about year-round part-time and who's seasonal part-time.
Actually, what we're looking at in our department and what I think we recommended a previous discussion was that we would basically have three categories within our department, which would be our permanent full-time staff, our permanent part-time staff, which would fall under this policy, and our seasonal employees, which would not fall under this policy. Our seasonal employees are not on the county wage schedule. And we have our own kind of built-in incentive system where they get that 10% if they work through the whole schedule for the season. And so when calculating this and doing the math and having these discussions from our department, obviously it's for you all to decide, but from our department, we're recommending those seasonals who are working the holidays, those are going to be a separate category. So you would still see a somewhat minimal impact to our department because the permanent, we have 7 permanent part-time employees. And
Does
again,
that
when
mean year-round part-time?
year-round.
Okay, so
permanent part-time.
that's where it's year-round and not,
So
Yep.
again, when we're budgeting for them, we're not budgeting for time and a half holidays, but we're not going and looking, okay, here's a holiday they won't be here. So it's kind of, it's similar to the impact on other departments, somewhat on a larger scale because we have 7 of them. And again, this is a whole different discussion if you decide that you want those seasonal employees to be included in this policy. Currently, we're not operating under that understanding. If that's the direction that the board chooses to move, it's a new set of members.
You're already incentivizing, are you not, to a certain extent?
Yes,
with the 10%.
they get a 10% of each hour they worked. At the end, actually, we're going to just submitted it this week. So those who completed their commitment to work the entire season, she went back every hour that they worked, they get 10% of the wage for that hour as a bonus at the end of the season. So they come into this job understanding it's a seasonal position, it's a summer job, you're working holidays. But then, hey, if you commit to that and you work your way through, some of them are getting anywhere up to like almost a $900 bonus at the end of the season because they kept that commitment. So,
Work the hours.
I mean, that's kind of your holiday bonus right there anyways.
So I guess my question is, does that particular aspect of the job, does that incentivize people to apply? And obviously it seems to be working where they stay through the season, which is important. I understand that. In South Florida, I did this very same thing during the season. I had an incentive program that if you stayed from Thanksgiving Day to Mother's Day, you got a nice big fat bonus at the end of May for that very reason.
I think it is attracting applicants. And we're going to speak to that more, obviously, I'm coming in the middle of a season, but based on conversations I've had with our parks maintenance supervisor and with Miranda, who does the hiring for the gate attendants, it seems like it's attracting candidates and it's attracting them and then it's retaining them to finish out the season.
Or even to come back for next season.
Or yeah, even to come back. And the reason we hesitate as a department to put them in that category is because then we have this additional category of year-round permanent part-time who aren't getting that 10% incentive. They're not getting holidays. So the holidays is the incentive for them.
Right.
And again, the seasonals are completely removed from the county wage scale. So they're already over here in their own bubble, which
They're being
is coming
taken care
for
of.
the work for approval and all that sort of thing, to be able to do that, to have a little bit of flexibility with setting their wages and incentivizing them. So for the purpose of this conversation, unless I hear otherwise from this committee, and I know when Melissa and I talked yesterday about numbers, we were not including that big group of students. This is strictly, we have 2 permanent part-time administrative staff, and we have 5 year-round permanent part-time maintenance staff. That's who this would get by. And Melissa actually has a total of what,
The impact,
maximum impact that. could
right, 'cause
be.
it could be less depending when they.
It
when they
could
work
be
or not
less.
work, or-
And then she said not every part-time is gonna work every single holiday.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but we almost, and much rather, here's the bigger, here's
Yeah.
what the worst case.
Yeah.
And maybe next year we can run those numbers and analyze, what does that really look like?
The old concept.
And this is
under
fif-
promise
this
and over deliver.
15,000.
Yeah,
The
15,000.
impact.
That includes FICA
That's
and
all
workers'
year,
comp
yeah,
as well.
that's wages and associated, associated benefits.
Yep.
And just one more thing, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, was that at time and a half or was that at their straight?
That was at time and a half.
So that's
because
at time and a
that's-
half, FICA,
Yeah.
everything, if all employees worked
Worked
every
all
holiday.
11 and a half, because they already get 2. They already get the 2, and this is the additional
Yep.
11 and a half to bring us up to 13 and a half that we get. Yep.
Have you had conversations with these folks that are on that permanent part-time to get their feedback on?
No, we just had our meeting with one of them.
Yeah,
How,
I know.
but what a difference that would make.
I mean, right from which, again, understanding that I just started in July, but immediately became clear to me that with one of those individuals, her thought was, even if I could just get Thanksgiving with my family and not have to use PTO, she would have been appreciative. So there's this attitude of they would be very grateful, and I think they would feel much more appreciated. So if you're talking a retention strategy, I think absolutely, if you can have a part-time job where you're getting paid holidays, you're not finding that a lot of places. And it's also for our, I know even for our maintenance staff, we haven't really had the conversations, but for them, they're having to work all of those summer holidays, but then we're still retaining them through the winter. So if they can say, you know what, I worked and I got financially compensated for every summer holiday that I had to miss with my family. And now I have the opportunity to be with my family for Thanksgiving, be with my family for, Christmas, New Year's. We're balancing them with a little bit of financial impact in the summer and then that actual quality time with their family in the winter. And keeping in mind that all of these activities are not going to be scheduled on every holiday anyways.
This is like maximum exposure.
Yes.
Sounds like a win-win-win. Now, if this is approved, I have a question for you. Could you give us some feedback after if it is approved? Get more feedback to us of whether or not it's
Happy to do
really,
that.
I'd like to hear what their feelings are on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So the other one we had seasonals, you said, would be the MRF.
Hmm?
They don't have a 10% incentive, right?
Correct,
So
correct.
if we're not going to include seasonals, I mean, I guess,
Right, that's more of a, why not include it? Yeah, to not include it.
and maybe the policy should say specifically it does not include seasonals, so.
Mhm. Oh, yes, I
Yeah.
think that would
Yeah,
have,
we
I
don't
think.
want any
right,
discrepancies
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
or
Yes, I think we'd-
loopholes or-
I can
We'd wanna
understand the
spell it
argument
out.
from Parks and Recreation's perspective, but
Mhm.
then I'm wondering if that,
We don't want to create.
we want to also maintain the,
I do wanna, I do wanna let you know the MRF, the impact there was just over $6,700, so not unimpactful, but not negligible, but not 15,000 either. I mean, I'd love to hear Jake's thoughts on that impact.
So total, we're talking less than $25,000 a year.
Yes, more importantly, for general fund, we're talking less than $1,700 a year.
your steak is getting cold.
I do want to
Thank you.
mention, I know Jen Crawford is on the Zoom. Maybe she's tuned in, I would imagine, for this conversation, but I do want to say, at Commission on Aging, they're generally not working the holidays. It's not a Parks and Rec, it's not a MRF situation. She might have some that are generally working holidays, but as far as budget impact, it's gonna be more neutral, like
Because we're already budgeting for them working full time
Correct.
anyway, so
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
the net impact is going to be minimal.
Yes, and again, outside funds. So maybe what the best thing to do is, this is just a discussion. I don't have any language drafted. Maybe from this discussion, I can draft some language. We're not in a period where there's an upcoming holiday. They're gonna miss out if you don't approve this next week, right?
Right. We got
So let's, take some time. I'll draft some language based on this
Look
conversation.
at it.
run it through
Next
legal,
week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
run it
Yeah,
through
good
legal
idea.
and
Okay.
make sure we're. all-
Moving on then,
Yep.
the invoice discussion list, we had two of them. I kind of looked at them and I don't have any questions on any of the bills that exceed 5,000 or any of the background information.
No, it came up with. Oh, I did have one question about the integrated architecture. This is over and above. This 18,282.
No, this
That's
is
just
in
part of
there.
our
This is part of their
general-
contract. It's a progress billing. So this is all
You know what I'm asking.
construction oversight now.
Yeah, you know what I'm
I
asking.
do know.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Nothing above and nothing over.
then I get a dime from me. Beyond that, no, I have nothing else, sir.
Well, this is only discussion item. Any announcements? All the public? We are adjourned.
Oh, ooh.